There is a voice that visits you in quiet moments, not loudly. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives when you pass by something you once wanted to do, a notebook you meant to fill, a song you meant to learn, a conversation you kept meaning to have, and it whispers something you have been pretending not to hear. I have left it too long. Not with drama, not with tears, just a quiet, patient wait. The kind that has been sitting in the corner of your chest for years, waiting for you to finally turn and look at it. You know the voice I mean. Today, I want to offer you something the Buddha taught more than 2,500 years ago, something that has nothing to do with urgency, nothing to do with pressure, and everything to do with the extraordinary, quiet, still available truth that beginning is always possible. At any age, with any pair of hands, in any ordinary morning. Stay until teaching number 5. What you hear there may be the thing you have quietly needed permission to believe for longer than you realize. If this channel has ever felt like a place where you can breathe, subscribe, and ring the bell. We walk slowly here, together. Now, breathe. Let your shoulders find their rest. Let these words find you exactly where you are. You did not arrive at this feeling through weakness or failure. The voice that says too late was handed to you in retirement cards that said, enjoy your rest. In a culture that celebrated youth beginning and fell silent when age did the same thing, in a generation taught that life has a proper sequence. You learn, you build, you finish. Beginning something new after 70 was never written into the script you were given. You didn't write that script. You only lived inside it. Until now. Teaching one, the timeline was never yours. There is a schedule most people carry that they never agreed to keep. It arrived quietly in the way certain birthdays were celebrated and others mourned, in the language of milestones and deadlines, in the unspoken arithmetic of by this age and at this point in life. You absorbed it so gradually, over so many years, that it stopped feeling like someone else's idea and started feeling like reality itself. And somewhere inside that schedule, there was a line past which certain things were no longer available, past which beginning something new felt not just difficult, but somehow presumptuous, as though new chapters were for other people, younger people, and your task now was simply to tend what had already been built. But here is what that voice never told you. The timeline was not a law. It was a story. And stories, even the oldest and most familiar ones, can be revised. Buddhist scripture teaches that wisdom and virtue are acquired gradually. The Anguttara Nikaya makes clear that nobody can expect to hone these vital skills all at once, regardless of their age. The tradition does not place a ceiling on becoming. It recognizes that understanding ripens in its own time, and that those who have lived longer have had the opportunity to gather something the young cannot yet carry, the particular weight of a life that has actually been tested. Research by Dr. Becca Levy at Yale University found that people become more creative and more generative later in life, directly contradicting the stereotype that creativity diminishes with age. The voice that says your best beginning is behind you is not reporting a fact. It is repeating a belief. And beliefs, even deeply held ones, are not the same as truth. Think for a moment about the timeline you are holding. Not the one you chose consciously, the invisible one. The one that tells you what is and isn't still available to you at this age. When did you agree to it? Who handed it to you? And when exactly did someone with the authority to determine the shape of your life, your specific, unrepeatable, still unfinished life, tell you that this particular door had closed? When did you last question the line you have been standing behind? When did you last ask whether that wall is concrete or chalk? When did you last wonder what might be on the other side of it, waiting not with impatience, but with the kind of quiet patience that only belongs to things that have been ready for a long time? Buddhist teacher Louis Richmond writes, "Every breath, new chances." He calls this a great teaching for older people, because part of aging is the belief that there are no more new chances, that you are stuck with what you have, but that is not really true. Every breath, every day, every morning is a kind of new chance. The timeline was not a law, it was a suggestion. And you are old enough now, more than old enough, to decide which suggestions you still need to keep. Teaching 2. The second best time. There is an old proverb, plain and true, that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Most people hear this proverb and feel, for a moment, something like hope. And then the mind does what minds do. It turns the first half into a reason not to act on the second. I should have started earlier. Now it's too late. What would be the point? But that logic contains a hidden assumption. It assumes that the only beginning worth making is the first one, that a tree planted today has no value because someone else planted one 20 years ago, that the second best time is a consolation prize for the people who missed the real thing. None of that is true. And deep in your body, somewhere below the story, you already know it isn't. Thich Nhat Hanh taught, "Living is a joy. Dying in order to begin again is also a joy. Starting over is a wonderful thing, and we are starting over constantly. Beginning anew is one of our main practices, and we must die every day in order to renew ourselves, in order to make a fresh start. Beginning anew is not a failure mode. It is not what happens when the real beginning didn't work out. In the Buddhist understanding, it is one of the most fundamental human capacities, the capacity to meet this moment with these hands, in this body, exactly as it is, and begin." Research in psychology confirms something important here. Older adults are actually more likely than younger adults to set goals around their intrinsic values around well-being and meaning, rather than external achievement. And this is associated with more sustained commitment to what they begin. In other words, the beginning you make now, at this age, with this clarity, may be more rooted and more lasting than any beginning you could have made in the years when you were busier, pulled in more directions, less sure of what actually mattered. The autumn garden is not a bare garden. It is a different garden. The things that bloom now are the things that could only survive the waiting, the deep-rooted things, the things that needed decades of frost and thaw before they were ready to open. You are not a late version of someone who should have started sooner. You are the version of yourself who is ready now, who has earned, through a lifetime of everything you have carried and survived, the particular authority of someone who knows why this beginning matters. One small act this week, not a project, not a plan, an afternoon learning the name of something you have walked past every day for years without knowing, a paragraph written, a phone call made, a seed placed in actual soil, tended with more care than it technically requires. The second best time is not a consolation. In this moment, this ordinary, quiet, completely available moment, it is the only time there is, and it is enough. Teaching 3 small is the truest beginning. You have been waiting to begin until you could begin properly, until you had enough time, until you had enough energy, until the thing you created would be worthy of the creating, finished enough, polished enough, significant enough to justify the hours you put into it. And so you have not begun. This is not laziness. It is not a character flaw. It is what happens when a lifetime of measuring worth by output meets the desire to make something that matters. The culture taught you early that beginnings are judged by what they produce. A beginning worth having leads somewhere visible. A beginning worth making yields something that can be shown, shared, held up as evidence that the time was not wasted. And so the small beginning, the paragraph no one will read, the sketch no one will see, the walk taken simply because the morning was beautiful feels like it doesn't count, like it is not a real beginning at all, but only a gesture toward one. But the Buddha taught something that quietly undoes all of this. He taught Chanda wholehearted intention as the true root of meaningful action, not the scale of what you do, not the audience, not the outcome, the quality of presence you bring to it. A single bowl of rice eaten with full attention nourishes more than a feast consumed in distraction. A single hour given completely to something you love is worth more than a week of half-hearted effort towards something impressive. Think of a conversation held on the way to somewhere else, words exchanged quickly, eyes already on the door, attention elsewhere. Now think of the same conversation held with nowhere else to be, the same words, the same two people. But one of these conversations is forgettable, and the other is the kind that stays with you for years. What changed is not what was said. What changed is the quality of presence when it was said. A Mahamudra teaching for aging practitioners puts it plainly. What makes the path difficult is the willingness to sit down and meet experience without distraction and without waiting for better conditions. You still have time. More than that, the entire path can be traversed in a single session, not a lifetime of preparation, a single session of genuine presence. This is what small, done with full attention, actually is. Not a lesser version of a real beginning, often the truest version, the one that bypasses performance and touches the actual thing, the love of making, the pleasure of learning, the simple dignity of showing up for your own life. Choose something small this week, something that asks nothing of you except your presence, and give that small thing for one afternoon, for 1 hour, for 20 minutes before the day gets busy, more attention than it technically requires. Not because it will become something great, because you deserve to know what it feels like to be fully inside your own life again. Small, done with full presence, is not a lesser beginning. It is often the only kind of beginning that leaves something real behind. Teaching 4. The years you didn't begin were not wasted. There is a quiet shame that lives in the gap between the life you imagined and the life you lived. Most people who carry it do not talk about it directly. It shows up in small ways, in the slight heaviness when someone mentions the novel they finished, the language they learned, the dream they finally pursued. In the automatic thought, I could have done that. I meant to do that. I should have done that years ago. And underneath that thought, a judgment, not always conscious, not always spoken, but present. I chose small. I chose safe. I chose others over myself, and now the window has closed. This judgment is the second arrow. The Buddha spoke of 2 arrows. When something painful happens, a loss, a mistake, a door that closed, that is the first arrow. It strikes and it hurts, and that pain is real. It is simply the honest cost of having been human in the world, of having loved and tried and lived inside a life that did not always go the way you hoped. But then there is the second arrow, the one you throw yourself, the rumination, the replaying, the belief that you must carry the weight of those unchosen years forever, that suffering long enough about what didn't happen is somehow the same as making it right. The first arrow was not your choice. The second one is. And most people do not realize they have been throwing it over and over, for decades. Before you accept the judgment that you failed to begin, sit with the actual story, not the edited version, the true one. There is a story told of a woman in a village who spent 40 years as the keeper of the community well. Every morning, before anyone else was awake, she walked to the well and drew water for those who would come. Every evening she repaired whatever the day had worn down. People came to her with thirst and left without it. She did not keep count of the mornings. She did not keep count of the people. She simply showed up day after day for 40 years. One evening, an elder passing through the village found her sitting beside the well with her hands in her lap, not drawing water, just looking up at the sky. He sat beside her. After a long silence, he said, "You did not waste the years at the well. You were the well. And now it is time to find out what else you are." Silence. Sit with that. The years you gave to other people's needs were not years stolen from your real life. They were your real life, one expression of it. The parent who showed up, the caretaker who stayed, the person who kept the well running for everyone who came thirsty. That was not a detour from a better life. That was a life. A genuine, valuable, irreplaceable life. Research confirms what wisdom traditions have always known. Meaningful change is not only possible in later adulthood, but achievable, and older adults consistently demonstrate higher levels of commitment to the goals they set, precisely because they are no longer chasing external validation. The person who begins now is not compensating for lost time. They are beginning exactly when they are ready, which is to say, now. The classroom of the past was real. You learned real things inside it. But a classroom is not meant to be a cell. The lesson has been taught. You are allowed to leave. You did not fail to begin. You were otherwise occupied in ways that mattered more than the story of your own shortcoming has ever given you credit for. The occupation has shifted, and now, quietly, without fanfare, so can you. Teaching 5. The monk who began at 72. I promised you a story at the beginning of this video. It is a short story, but it has been sitting quietly behind everything said so far, waiting for the right moment to become the thing you carry home. In a certain region, there lived an elderly monk who had become known far and wide for the extraordinary quality of his calligraphy. People traveled long distances to see his work, to hold even a single page of it, with its characters that seemed not written but breathed onto the paper, each stroke carrying a stillness that moved from the page into the body of the person reading it. A visitor who had walked several days to meet him arrived and found the monk at his low desk, brush in hand, moving with the unhurried focus of someone who had nowhere else to be and no one else to become. The visitor watched for a long time. Then, quietly, he asked, "Master, when did you begin to practice?" The monk did not look up from his work. "At 72, he said. The visitor was silent. Then, "Were you not discouraged? Starting so late?" The monk set down his brush. He looked at his hands, the hands that had spent 72 years becoming the hands now capable of this. The hands that had carried firewood and sutras, that had cooked rice and folded cloth, that had held the dying and comforted the grieving, and done 10,000 ordinary things across a lifetime of service. And then he looked up at his visitor with an expression that held no apology, no performance of wisdom, only the simple clarity of someone who had stopped measuring himself against a timeline that was never his. "Late," he said, "compared to what? I had never done this before. For me, this was exactly the right time. Sit with that. Really sit with it. Let it find the place in you where the too late voice lives." The visitor's question, "Were you not discouraged?" is the question that voice asks every time you reach toward something new. And the monk's answer is not optimism. It is not inspiration designed to make you feel better for an afternoon. It is something quieter and more lasting than either of those things. It is the recognition that late is a comparison, and comparisons require a reference point. The monk had released his reference point. He was not measuring his beginning against some imagined earlier beginning that never existed. He was measuring it only against this brush, this morning, this page. Buddhist teacher Louis Richmond speaks of this quality directly. I had a Buddhist teacher who once said, "Every breath, new chances." This is a great teaching for older people, because part of aging is the belief that there are no more new chances. Well, that's not really true. The monk's calligraphy was not remarkable because he began young. It was remarkable because when he began at 72, with 72 years of a fully lived life behind him, he brought to it everything those years had made him. The patience learned through loss, the steadiness learned through grief. The ability to be fully present that only comes to someone who has watched enough rush and urgency burn themselves out, and quietly decided to stop adding fuel to that fire. As Buddhist wisdom on aging observes, as we grow older, mindfulness and acceptance become not harder but easier after a lifetime spent learning what actually matters and what does not. You are not behind. You are not a late arrival at a party that started without you. You are, right now, exactly as prepared as you need to be for the beginning that is available to you today. Ask yourself just once, honestly, without the noise of the too late voice, what have I been calling impossible that might simply be unbegun, not finished, not gone, not foreclosed, simply not yet started, sitting there quietly, the way a blank page sits, the way an instrument sits in a corner, waiting for the hands that will finally learn it, the way a conversation waits in the chest for the voice that will finally speak it. You are not behind. You are exactly as many years as you are into becoming the person whose beginning, this one, right now, today, will mean something that no earlier beginning ever could have. Teaching 6. What you bring that youth cannot buy. Whatever you begin now, you bring something to it that no young person on earth possesses, and it is worth more than any head start they might have. We live in a culture that celebrates the advantages of youth, the energy, the elasticity, the reckless courage of someone who does not yet fully know what can go wrong. These are real gifts. The young begin things with a freedom that comes from inexperience, and sometimes that freedom produces extraordinary things. But it comes with a counterpart that is never mentioned. It comes with the thinness of a life not yet tested, the particular hollowness of someone who has studied about loss but not yet truly known it, who has read about impermanence but has not yet sat beside it through a long night, who knows what the words mean but not yet what they weigh. Louis Richmond, writing in Tricycle after decades of Buddhist practice, says it plainly, "It wasn't until I reached the later years of my life that I truly understood the Buddha's first encounters with old age, sickness, and death. I came to realize that aging is the essence of what the Buddha taught. The depth he is describing cannot be taught in a class. It cannot be accelerated. It can only be lived into year by year, loss by loss, season by season, until the understanding moves from the mind into the body, where it becomes something different, something that no longer needs to be argued for or explained, something that simply is. Think of two voices singing the same song. The young voice is clear, bright, effortless, the beauty of something that has not yet been worn. The old voice has lost some of that. The range has shifted, the clarity has softened, but in the places where the brightness once was, something else has settled, a roughness that is also a kind of truth, a weight that reaches the listener differently, an authority that is felt in the chest before it is understood by the mind. Yale researcher Becca Levy found, in her study of aging and creativity, that artists and musicians frequently become more creative and more generative in later life, not less. The assumption that creativity diminishes with age is not a finding. It is a stereotype that the evidence consistently contradicts. Some things can only be made by someone who has lived long enough to mean them. When you begin something now, whatever it is, however small, bring what you have. The slowness that allows you to see things the hurried miss. The perspective that comes from having watched enough urgency exhaust itself to know that steady presence is worth more than frantic effort. The knowledge, earned through actual living, of what matters and what does not. Do not apologize for the pace. Do not compare your learning curve to someone younger. Do not measure the output against what you might have produced at 40. Bring what is actually here. Because what is actually here, the accumulated weight of a fully lived life, brought to bear on something you genuinely love, is irreplaceable. The young have the gift of time stretching out ahead of them. You have something they cannot purchase yet. The authority that comes from having lived inside uncertainty long enough and loss deeply enough to stop being destroyed by either. That is not a lesser gift. In many of the things that matter most, it is the greater one. Teaching 7, tell them now. There is one beginning that requires no preparation, no special skill, no favorable conditions, no waiting for the right season or the perfect words or the moment when you finally feel ready enough to be that vulnerable. It is available to you today, in this hour, with nothing more than a phone that works or a piece of paper and a pen. It is the beginning of saying the true thing to someone who is still here to receive it. Most people have at least one person in their life, a child, a sibling, an old friend, a neighbor who appeared during a year that would have been impossible without them, to whom they have never fully said what they meant. The feeling is real. The words exist somewhere. But the right moment has always been slightly ahead, in a future where the conditions were better, where it felt less awkward, where you had found, finally, exactly the right way to say it without breaking open. That future has a way of not arriving. The Buddha taught Maranasati, the practice of holding the awareness of impermanence gently, honestly, in the ordinary moments of daily life. Not as a morbid exercise, not as a way of manufacturing grief, but as a clarifying light, the kind that, when you allow yourself to sit with it honestly, burns away the small and reveals the essential. Tricycle's coverage of aging and Buddhist practice points to this consistently. The awareness of mortality, held with courage rather than avoidance, does not produce despair. It produces presence. It makes visible what actually matters and quietly dissolves what does not. The practice asks a simple question. Not, what if I die? That is the anxious loop, the one that spirals without landing. The question it asks is this. Given that time is finite, and I know it, what conversation am I postponing that I would regret not having? Is there someone who held you together during a year you might not have survived without them, and who does not know, not really, with the full weight of the words, what that meant to you? Is there a child or a grandchild you watch becoming themselves and feel something so large you have never found a way to say it, so you say nothing, or you say something smaller, and hope they somehow understand? Is there a person you have been meaning to call since a season that passed while you were managing other urgencies, someone you think of sometimes and feel warmth toward, and who has no idea? Is there something you have been waiting to say until you found words worthy of the feeling? Here is what the Buddha's teaching on impermanence asks of you. Stop waiting for the words to be perfect. They will never be perfect. They will only be real, and real is what the other person needs. Not a polished speech, not a carefully constructed declaration. The actual thing. The slightly awkward, somewhat vulnerable, genuinely meant actual thing. Classical Buddhist teachings on aging remind us that even in our elder years, it is still very much possible to find ease and joy, and that this ease comes not from resolving every difficulty, but from the quality of attention and love we bring to the relationships that remain. One sentence, spoken or written, not "I appreciate you," the real one, the specific one, the one that names what they actually were to you, in the year or the moment that mattered. Begin today, not when you find the right words. You will find them once you start speaking. The most important beginning you can make today may not be a project or a skill or a dream you have been deferring. It may simply be one true sentence given to someone while there is still time to give it. That sentence is a beginning, and it is available to you right now, in this moment, exactly as you are. Today you walked through 7 teachings that have waited more than 2,500 years to find you exactly where you are. You remembered that the timeline telling you it was too late was never yours. It was handed to you by a culture with no authority over the shape of your life. You remembered that the second best time is not a consolation, but the only time that is actually available, and that it is enough. You sat with the truth that small, done with full presence, is often the truest beginning of all, not a gesture toward the real thing, but the real thing itself. You released, perhaps a little, the weight of the years you didn't begin understanding now, that those years were not evidence of failure, but the honest record of a life that had other necessary work to do. You heard the monk at 72, with his brush and his unhurried certainty, who looked at his hands and saw not a late start but exactly the right time. You remembered that what you bring to any beginning now, the depth, the stillness, the authority of someone who has lived fully inside the difficulty of being human, is something no young person on earth can replicate. And you heard the invitation of the last teaching, that the most available beginning of all may simply be one honest sentence given to someone who is still here to receive it. Before we close, I want you to know that these words were written by a person, not a machine. Someone who has also stood at the edge of something unbegun and felt the weight of the too late voice. Someone who wrote these teachings slowly, with great care, hoping they would find the right person at the right moment. I hope today they found you. There is only one thing left now, not a grand gesture, not a dramatic announcement, not a commitment to transform everything at once, just one small beginning. Today, not when the conditions are better, or the timing is clearer, or the voice in the back of your mind grows quieter. Today, with whatever this ordinary morning holds, write one sentence, make one call, sit in the garden for an afternoon and call it, without apology, sacred. Tell one person what they meant to you in the year that was hardest. Learn the name of one thing you have walked past every day for 20 years without knowing. The size of what you begin does not determine its worth. The quality of your presence within it determines everything. You have lived a long time, you have given a great deal, you have been the keeper of many wells, and there is still, right now, in this actual moment, in this specific and unrepeatable day, a life waiting for you to arrive in it. Begin. Imperfectly. Slightly afraid. Exactly as you are. That has always been enough. Tell me in the comments, what is one thing you have been calling too late that might simply be not yet begun? Leave it below. Your words there may be exactly the permission someone else needed to read today. If this felt like a place worth returning to, subscribe. We walk slowly here, and there is always room for one more. And remember this as you go. You were not made to wait forever at the edge of your own life. The water is fine, and you have earned every single breath of it. What comes next?